Size does matter. Here's your stock one, 87 millimeters. NCY Performance, 89 millimeters. 95 millimeters, the Ruckus one. They used to not make a 95 millimeter for the QMB 139. They do now. But if you have one of these old ones, we're going to use that, and I'll show you how to use it, because it's, if you can see the height, it's thinner than these other ones, and that makes a difference. And I know we're only talking about girth when size matters, but what about length? Well, that matters too. And here's the length, 38.5 millimeters. That's an important length. You'll see these things, performance ones that are shorter. Let's do a stock Variator run, 87 millimeter Variator. I'm going to use this GPS Speedo and my GoPro GPS Speedo for the speeds. Some Variators you may only get the belt to right here, but as long as you're pulling it all the way in the bottom, that's okay. But generally I've found the belts are too long, so if you can get a bigger Variator up in front, you can pull the belt tighter in the bottom. So we've got the drive plate on the outside. Then you got the crankshaft that comes through here and splines into the drive plate. You've got this, this is not a bushing, but this is what I'm using for demonstration purposes. You got that bushing that slides over the crankshaft. You got the drive belt in here. Then you have the Variator. Then you have your little roller balls in there. And you got the Variator ramp. So the distance from this drive face, or we'll call it a flywheel in this case, to that engine case is not negotiable. That has to be the same. So you can change the Variator boss distance, but you've got to make up for that distance between the case and the Variator assembly to keep this in the same place so it lines up with the rear pulley and the starter engages it properly. When the engine's idling, the Variator ramp is all the way up here because the little roller balls aren't pushing it outwards, and the belt's allowed to go down in here. This is your low gear for taking off and accelerating. As these roller balls up here roll out in the little ramps and push the Variator back plate onto the ramp out, the Variator actually drops down and pushes the belt out and puts you into high gear. The length of this bushing is very important. As you can see, it's going to allow the Variator to go at a certain amount, and it stops right here with these engaged. The ramp is still engaged with the Variator, and everything spins nicely on the drive shaft, and it can go up and down like this, so you can see how that's happening. So let's swap this bushing out for one that's a little bit longer. As the rollers accelerate out and the ramp goes up, pushes the Variator down, we can now push the Variator further in, but look at the engagement. It's barely engaged to the point that just the plastic is holding it. The plastic could fail and that could spin around on top. Obviously, if we made the bushing even longer, the ramps would push out to a point where it would come completely out of the Variator, and the ramp and the Variator would not be engaged anymore. So let's take it to the other extreme. Can this boss be too short? Well, let's take it out all together. The shortest boss in the world, the worst case scenario is these touch each other, which they might. But that belt still fits in there. It fits in there perfectly. Too long of a boss does not prevent the plates from touching each other. It just has the problems of the ramp coming off. What too short of a boss will do is it'll limit the travel of this. So we would be taken off in high gear. It would be lugged down. And I bring this up because I see on the forums and online they sell a 36mm boss to replace your 38mm one. They say the 38mm one, the stock boss, is a speed limiter. People are shaving their Variator boss down 1mm to push the belt out farther. There's a racing boss. An extension usually improves acceleration, shortening increases top speed. Shorter boss and the belt is pushed up higher for newfound top speed. Put the shorter 36mm boss in, you can now go faster. And I don't see how that's true. It doesn't matter which size boss you have, those plates can come together. But what can change is the thickness of this variator between here and here. And that is essentially the same as changing the length of this bearing. Here's top gear. It's variators all the way touching the drive face, and you can see the little dog is still engaged with the drive plate, so this boss would work. Yeah, performance one is 89mm, and that fits your DO or your QMB 139. So I've got the NCY Performance Variator on here, the gold one, and it's an 89mm. I put it on, I've marked it with a magic marker. We're going to go out and give it a top speed run. So that run was, I think, 45 miles an hour on the speedo. So I put my magic marker mark right there. You can see it's using the entire 89mm. The only way to spin this back wheel faster is to spin the belt faster by getting it to the upper part of the variator or past it with a larger around variator, the 95mm, or I could gear the rear end different. But I might save that for later and put that 95mm variator on here. If you have a Metro or a Ruckus or the GET, you can get a zoomer variator. And the zoomer variator is 95mm. So another 5mm. That can bring the belt tighter into the bottom or into the rear drive and get you more top speed potentially. And here's the specs for it. The specs are pretty much the same until you get to this one. 95mm, that's a good thing. This height right here, 31mm. The height on the one for the QMB 139 is 32.4mm. That's a difference of 1.4mm, not that much. Here's 1.4mm, and that's all it takes. That's a difference in engaging that and not engaging it. So this sleeve works fine for this variator. But if we went to a thinner variator on the same sleeve, as the rollers went out, it would push the ramp off and look right off the variator. So now the table's the engine, and this is outside. We want to put a 95mm variator on the Maddog, but this is too thin. It needs to be up here more so it doesn't come apart. The obvious solution is to take our 1.4mm spacer and put between the engine and the variator. The issue is that the boss sits on top of the ramp. It doesn't go through the ramp. So if we put the spacer back here between the engine and the variator, and all we did was move the entire variator assembly out away from the engine, we still didn't change anything here. It can still have the same amount of throw and come apart. And the belt will not be aligned now. We need to shorten the variator boss by 1.4 to make up for it and bring this drive face plate down 1.4. We'll bring our belt back in alignment since we brought this whole thing out, and it will also shorten the distance between these two back to the original distance. So the 95 should not come apart. 38.5 millimeter boss, and we need to take 1.4 off of it. So we're looking for a 37.1, so 37 millimeter boss. CY store has this boss for a Honda Dio. It's 20 outside diameter, 14 inside, so that's the right measurements, and it's 35.7, and we need, what did I say, 37.1. So that's actually 1.4 millimeters too short, but it would work. Your variator wouldn't come apart, and it's a ridiculous price though. But if we go with this shorter boss right here, that's 35.7 I think, and it was supposed to be 38.5. That's 2.8 millimeters shorter. This drive face is not only stationary, it needs to be in one place and not move out and in, because it's aligned with the rear drive, but it's also where your starter engages. So this has to stay in the same place. So since we put a 2.8 millimeters shorter boss in there, we have to add 2.8 millimeters to this entire thing. They sell this spacer kit. It's pretty cheap. And this is actually to space your variator and get it lined up right. It's 14 millimeters inside diameter, 20 millimeters outside, and it's a shim set. It comes with 10 of all these shims. 0.1 millimeters, 0.5, 0.2. So you can dial that spacing in to exactly where you need it. So when we put the spacers on, it's going to basically lengthen this shaft. So if you buy the 35.7 millimeter spacer and you want to get to 37.1, you're going to need 1.4 millimeters of spacers on this shaft. You can put them right here on the outside between the drive plate and the boss. This stock boss is 38.5 millimeters. So we've shortened the whole thing. Even with the spacers, we've shortened the whole thing by 1.4. So we're going to add that between the engine case and the back plate. I'm going to trim mine down to 37.1. So I'm not going to need the spacers right here. But if you buy that boss, you're going to need spacers right there. And the kit comes with enough spacers to do both sides. Raises the question, why do all this work? Why not just buy a 95 millimeter variator for the Maddog 50? They have 95 millimeter variators. Polini makes one that says it fits the QMB, and but it's pretty expensive. I try to knock this out for under 50 bucks by cutting down my boss and using that NCY variator. But if you're not able to cut down your boss and you would have had to buy that other one, then definitely go this route here. 90 bucks, that's going to be cheaper probably. You have to think of these transmissions as like a bicycle. I can't just throw the chain down here and go faster on a bicycle. Obviously if I'm going downhill I could, but on straight and level ground I may not have the power with my legs to pedal in that gear. So I'm going to slow down. My legs are going to bog down. I can probably go faster right in here somewhere. Maybe up here I'm just spinning my legs too fast. My RPM is too high. I'm not getting tired, but I'm not going very fast. So there's a sweet spot in here somewhere where my legs can go a good enough RPM to make me go the fastest. And it's usually not down here. A guy with triathlon legs might get his highest speed here. A guy with spindly legs might get his highest speed here. As you're trying to go faster and faster and you keep gearing this thing higher and higher, you're going to get to a point where your legs can't push that gear and you're going to slow down. So you might go 20 miles an hour, 21 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you start going 19 miles an hour here. You need to come back here. The point is everyone's legs are different. Yeah, just as everyone's bikes are different, especially 50s. So when we're talking about roller weights, variator size, belt size, things like that, one solution does not fit all bikes. Your bike may not have the power someone else's bike does, and you may end up lugging it down by trying to do these go fast mods. But this 50 has the big block kit, I think 90 cc's, It has the bigger valve head and the NCY cam. See if I can cut this thing down. Alright, enough boring you. Let's put this 95mm variator on and give it a speed run. You see on my GoPro GPS, it went from 42 with the stock variator up to 43 with the NCY performance, and that's about all you're going to get out of that CVT transmission kit and 89mm variator. Then it went 49, which is actually 50 because the GoPro GPS is about a mile an hour slow. So yeah, 50 miles an hour by just putting the 95mm variator on it. What a great mod to do for your 50s. And you gotta have the power to push it though. It's lugging down just a little bit. I could probably get a few, maybe a mile an hour or two out of it if I reduce the roller weights. I know that's opposite thinking, but I'm actually gonna get more RPM that way. And but I'm not gonna do that because we've got a smooth bore carb coming for it, a PWK flat slide.